and then we'll get started. And as people come in, I'll let them into the waiting or in from the waiting room. So I'm really excited to present Jaime Black, whose work is on view right now in the Foreman Gallery. Jaime Black is a multidisciplinary artist of mixed Anishinaabe and Finnish descent. Her practice engages in themes of memory and identity, place, and resistance, and is grounded in an understanding of the body and the land as sources of cultural and spiritual knowledge. So just a little background, I first came across Jaime's work when I was in grad school in New York City. I was attending a symposium called Resisting, Reclaiming, and Reframing, and it was talking about Indigenous communities and the art museum collections. And that was where Sherry Farrell Rassett was talking about community engagement and the way the arts sort of pull people into social change. And she used Jaime Black's work as one of her examples. So when she put it on the screen, it was really a shifting moment for me. It brought about just an intense amount of grief and horror at the violence that Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people face because they face far more violence than any other group in North America. And I knew when I started at Hartwick that we had to get Jaime's work in the gallery so that we can have these conversations, which I think are really important. And I was really honored when Jaime said yes. So her work is currently on view in the Foreman Gallery. So you can see Between Us, which has the Red Dress Project, as well as some of her other work. And we also are featuring a new addition to the Red Dress Project, which will be continuing on as it moves forward to different institutions, which is a shawl by Monica Antone Watson. Monica is a Mohawk regalia seamstress of the Wolf Clan. She's working towards her BA in textile studies and Native American studies at Syracuse. And she was very excited to be able to participate in this exhibit too. So without further ado, I will share my screen and give Jaime the floor, and give me 1 second to try and share my screen.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for doing that for me. Bonjour, everybody. Thanks so much for coming here. It's really a pleasure to be part of this. And I wish I could have been able to come in person and see you guys, but I guess we're relegated to Zoom for now. But I'm just so excited to have this work actually up and still moving around after all these years. I actually started this project in 2009. And I was really thinking about, what kind of social issues we're facing here on Turtle Island here in Canada, and, how art can kind of like, open up a safe space to speak out about some of these kind of the colonial violence that Indigenous women have been facing. And, as an artist and a creative person, I just, I had witnessed quite a few different things around, like being around the activist circles and being around Indigenous groups of people and like learning what's going on the ground. And also, being tied to that as well myself in my own family and the violence people in my own family have faced. And just really thinking about that, how do we address this violence? What do we do to kind of start these conversations and hopefully come together and make safer spaces for each other? And, of course, I'm always kind of thinking through those sorts of things, but it actually wasn't until I was at a conference in Germany, actually, with a partner of mine. And at this conference, they were studying Indigenous studies, and they were primarily non-Indigenous people studying. And there was one woman in this group of academics, and she was also the only Indigenous woman in the room, beside myself, but I wasn't presenting. So she stood up after everyone had kind of given their talks about their research and that sort of thing. And then she stood up and she said, there are thousands of missing or murdered Indigenous women across Canada. And at the time, I think nobody in that room, after all the studying and all the academic research they had done, no one in that room actually knew that. because it wasn't in any of the textbooks. It wasn't in anything overseas. It wasn't the story sort of Canada was telling about itself internationally. So as I was sitting there sort of listening to her speak and her saying that, like the room went like dead silent. No one knew how to respond to that. And I think that a lot of people were actually in shock. And I just thought that was so brave of her and courageous of her to stand up and say and tell that truth in that room of people. And as I was sitting there as a spectator, I imagined there being red dresses everywhere, and just these red dresses everywhere you walk in public spaces, so that we couldn't forget this violence that was happening. Because often this violence, you know, it occurs in private spaces. It occurs, you know, not in the public eye. So it was really about bringing out this story and taking this story out from under the carpet and allowing us as women, as Indigenous women, to be able to break that silence, and to break that silence together. I think a lot of times too is like when we're facing violent situations, it's very difficult to speak out. And, you know, I'm sort of realizing that more and more, that this project has really allowed a space for people to speak out about these experiences, you know, without fear of repercussion, because we're speaking out together. And so it allows us a safe space to speak out and to speak out publicly about the violence that we're experiencing in our lives. Yeah, and so this woman was named Joanna Piscanu, and she's since passed on, but she was a teacher at First Nations University in Alberta here in Canada. And she was just a really powerful woman, and it was, it, you know, it was really an honor to hear her speak and to get to know her during that time. And you know, after I'd had that idea, I kind of came back from that trip and I brought that idea home, and I gathered some red dresses and I started putting them up in public spaces, just on my own, kind of thinking, okay, this is, you know, maybe this will go somewhere. And, you know, I really think that the work tapped into, you know, like really tapped into a vein, like really tapped into something powerful that needed to have space to be spoken about. And because you know, since that time, these dresses have been shown all across Canada since 2009. I've gone to like probably had like 6 to 7 exhibitions of red dresses every single year across Canada over time. The dresses have been shown in places in Europe. They've been shown now in the United States for the last 3 or 4 years. They've been traveling United States. So these dresses are really doing, they're really doing the good work of fighting for justice, these dresses. And, you know, I started out thinking about, you know, the violence and the victimhood that these dresses carry in them when we see them. But I also think it's really, there's a presence, there's an absence, but there's also a presence, and it's a very powerful presence. And I've over the years come to recognize how important it is to also, you know, speak of and notice the presence and the strength and the power in these dresses. Because what I have seen over the years is these dresses have almost become warriors for justice. They speak where we can't speak. They say what we can't say, and they really connect with people, and they really allow, you know, these conversations to start happening. So I really think of these dresses now as, you know, these spirits of these women that are standing with us as we fight for justice. You can change slides. I feel off put by my slides. They're throwing me. Can you go one more? Yeah, yeah. So this is kind of what I'm talking about, is that, like, you know, over the years, the dresses have transformed from a symbol of victimhood to a symbol of strength. And I feel like that's really personified in a lot of ways in this image right here. And this is an image of Wet'suwet'en blockade for the, I believe, a pipeline that was going into the traditional territory in that area. So these dresses are being brought forth by communities and people to literally block the way and stand guard on these sacred territories, which I think is so powerful and so moving. I've also seen like online, because I can't keep track of everything that people are always doing with these dresses. But I've just seen so many amazing ways these dresses have been, brought forward to really stand for justice. But another way that I saw was, I believe on the Day for Missing Women here in Canada, a statue was toppled of a colonial leader of some sort. I don't remember which one exactly, but it was replaced with a red dress. So it's just really, it's so amazing to see these dresses like really holding that energy and that power and just holding space for justice like that. It's been incredible to watch. And I just feel like, I carry these dresses. I feel like I brought these dresses forward, but they're not mine. And I feel like, it's like my job was to sort of like start a spark, but then a fire erupted, and like all across the country, in both Canada and the US and beyond, these dresses are doing their work, and they're really calling attention to, the ongoing colonization and the patriarchy and all of those systems that are oppressing Indigenous women. And I just, yeah, honestly, like as an artist, like I'm in awe of the work that these dresses are doing, and that the communities are doing, and that the people and the grassroots are doing, with the help of this symbol of these dresses, is just so powerful. And I just feel really lucky actually to be part of this movement, because it's a movement now. I guess we can go to the next one. Yeah, so this is actually an image of photographic work that I took, and that's myself in the photo there. And I think this is around the pivot point where I kind of was moving from thinking about the dresses as embodying, or as like kind of holding space for absence rather than presence, and victimhood, and kind of focusing on the violence, because I think that was part of the process, is like understanding the extent to which that violence affects everyone. But also part of the process was transitioning through that and rethinking these dresses as a symbol of power. And this image really, I feel like, personifies that. Like, it's like, what does it look like when we're in the red dress, when we're standing in our power, when we're, instead of standing still, we're dancing, we're shaking, we're shaking off the sort of shackles of these systems that have oppressed us through dance, and just like I feel like dance is also like a way of, and it's like very embedded in Indigenous culture, to really call in those ancestral spirits, and to be able to release these kind of colonial frameworks that we're caught inside of. And I feel like dance is an amazing way of being able to do that. So this image really is around that pivot point of like turning and thinking about, what does it mean to be embodied? What does it mean to also be out on the land and reconnect to that land-based knowledge? And to me, that land-based knowledge is that ancestral knowledge. The land carries that history of colonialism, but it also carries that history of humanity living in perfect balance on this land. That, I always kind of think about it as like, colonialism actually is a very small fraction of time. These systems that we live in is a very small fraction of time when you think about over the course of humanity, how long we have been here on this land. And we as human beings used to live in relative harmony with these systems and with each other for the most part, because we were interdependent on each other. And so I feel like the land holds that knowledge. And I'm really interested in, as an artist and just as a Métis woman, and just is really reconnecting to that ancestral knowledge, like where, because I feel like that's sort of like going to help us in moving forward and making a more balanced world. I feel like, our ancestors knew how to live in relative harmony with things. And I mean, I don't mean to be, totally idealistic, you guys, but I feel like there are lessons to be learned in that ancestral knowledge that we have forgotten. And we've forgotten our place in the systems that are around us. We are part of a whole, and that interrelationship between ourselves and the land is a really important part of that. And this work of going back onto the land and kind of engaging my body with the land, and kind of showing that through my art practice as photography or video work has really been a way for me to rebalance and heal myself through doing this work with the red dresses, and just really thinking about, like, where do we as Anishinaabe, as Indigenous women, where do we regain our power? And to me, it's there. That's like, on the land is where I feel like that's where we can shed those systems that that are controlling us, and to release that, and to reconnect to something more real, something more ancient, something more just more balanced. Yeah. And so from this point on, I started doing work with myself, my body, and on the land. And so I go to these spaces. I have been going to these spaces that I feel connected to. And my actually family is from basically between Thunder Bay and Winnipeg, which you guys probably don't even know where those places are, but basically near Lake Superior, which you might know that, to like the prairies area is where, like, sort of my family line has been moving between those spaces for, it seems like, a pretty long way back. So I am actually, like, on my, some of my ancestors' traditional territory here. So I do feel connected to this land, and I do feel like that's part of who I am, and it's available there as like a teacher. And in doing this work, photography work, I'm really going to the land to learn from it, what it holds within it. You can switch slides. Yeah, so again, this is a continuation of sort of that exploration of creating those interconnections between the body and the land. And this is out at a waterway near Manitoba here. And yeah, I'm holding this red fabric, and I know it's always red everything, and so, like, I can talk a little bit about that. I think of, like, I feel like red is a it's such a powerful color, and I feel like I'm pausing because I don't want to give specific meaning to it, but many different cultures have different ways of understanding this color. And so the color red has been used in ceremonial practices from traditional land-based people all over the world, which is really amazing. And I think that there's actually a lot of connections in what the color means between those traditions. For me, myself, it was like an intuitive choice. Like, I've always been drawn to that color. I feel like it's the color of lifeblood. It's like what unites all of us. It's our life force. And I also, like, worked with a woman over the course of doing the Red Dress Project who told me that one of her teachings was that red was the only color that the spirits can see. So, like, by using this color, we're calling in this energy of these spirits. And so in this image, I'm using this red thread as almost like this physical, like, connection between myself and the water. So I'm thinking of it almost like an umbilical cord, or like this interconnection between us, and but also like as an offering. um I'm giving, I went out there and I just intuitively created a ceremony almost while I was out there, and the ceremony was for the water and to honor the water and to also go back to the water. Like these images kind of lead, and the ceremony led into the ribbon and myself being fully immersed in the water. And to me, that's where we go for healing, right? Like the water is able to take, to literally wash off of us, um, what holds us back, what holds us down. It can emotionally cleanse us too, and I just am kind of like exploring that interrelationship between the water and the body through this work. You can switch it, please. Go ahead. Yeah, I think I already see. That's what I'm saying. Sort of the same thing happening in this image. This image is actually taking quite a long time before I made that one with the hands, but again, it was kind of like my first kind of like experimenting with thinking about this red thread, this interconnection. In this image, I feel like it's a little bit also thinking about the waterways in the same way as we'd think about the veins in our own body, right? Like I was working with some kids recently, and we're learning some water teachings, and the importance of water, and how how we're connected to the water. And I think sometimes it's hard to process that only from an intellectual level. But I had those kids look at their hand, and see what the veins look like in our hands, and just like make that connection that the waterways and the veins in our hands are interconnected. They're the same thing. It's like we're one and the same. And so that relationship is so important. Yeah, you can switch it, please. Yes. Oh, this image always trips me up, you guys. Because I find it so visceral, actually, even though I made it. And so this image, again, I'm kind of exploring that interconnection between the body and the land. And this is really an image of like transformation and rebirth. And I actually named this image They Tried to Bury Us. This is why, it's emotional. That's why it like feels hard to talk about. But yeah, like I was just really thinking about that transformation, that that death is also a rebirth always, right? Like this, and that's that cycle, and the pain of that, but also like just like the intimate connection, like feeling that intimate connection to that landscape, like it's like physically against your body, is like something really amazing. And I was thinking about that saying, they tried to bury us, and the rest of it is like they tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we were seeds. And so it's like the death is also the emergence of all of these, the re-emergence of something. So it's like we as Indigenous women are the seeds left by those who have gone before us, right? And we're gonna come back out of that, and we're gonna stand, and we're and in turn we our children and those generations that come after will also be those seeds that carry that that fight for justice forward, that reclaiming who we are forward. I was also thinking about in this image just the way that women working with plants or healing women in Europe were also persecuted. And so this thinking about like spiritual or women who knew plants or healing and all of that have been actually persecuted, in Europe, like everywhere around the world. And so there's this, violence coming against us, but we keep coming back, like we keep coming back because that knowledge, um, we're reclaiming that knowledge. We're reclaiming those healing practices. We're reclaiming that, plant medicine, that, um, you know, cultural practice, all of those things. And just like recreating this space where we are together in balance and more in balance with the land around us. Yeah, you can go the next one, please. Can you switch sides? Oh, thanks. Didn't know if you heard me. um, yeah, so this one also is a is a continuation of all the themes I've been sort of talking about. Like there's the absence and presence in this image. Like I feel like this watermark is it's like an absence, like someone got up and left, but it also kind of feels to me like it's maybe the embodiment of an ancestor that is in that rock coming out, like coming back out of that rock and like meeting me, because I feel like, again, like the land holds and carries all of that memory. Like I think about, my ancestors, probably walked on this rock. Like how amazing is that? And I feel like that knowledge they carried and the way that people lived is still in that rock, is still in that water. And so just like making this physical connection is just so very powerful. And I almost feel like it's just like we can get that, we can feel that knowledge almost. Like it's a strange thing to say, but there's just something so amazing. Like it feels amazing to lay on that rock, let me just tell you. Like it's, and I think that's why, like it's just like it's, there's generations and generations and generations of humans have, and also spiritual energy, in that rock that's so powerful and grounding. um and yeah, and so this practice has really like been a way for me also to think about and feel healing in myself through all of this sort of um just all the violence we're always facing. It's like doing work like this helps me myself literally ground myself through it, literally be able to get in the water and let some of that go and like recenter, to be able to go out and keep doing that work. And I hope to, through my, these practices, to share these practices with other Indigenous women and younger women, and and allow them to be able to have that sense of healing by engaging and being on the land, and relearning some of that knowledge, and relearning like just ceremony and cultural knowledge and traditional teachings. And I think that like reconnecting to those teachings really grounds us in ourselves, and allows us to kind of move forward from a space of strength instead of a space of sort of victimhood. Okay, you can switch it. Thanks, Sid. Here I am in the water. Yeah, and so I kind of feel like this is almost like a birth photo to me. Like it's, again, it's just like creating those interconnections, and how powerful it is when we go back to um that feeling of before we came into this world. Our mothers carried us in the water in their wombs. um that is powerful. That's a powerful connection, and to know that we're a part of that cycle. And I feel like in a lot of Indigenous ceremony as well, it's really about going back to the mother, going back to that place where we came from, and finding comfort there and finding strength there. Like, for example, when you go into a sweat lodge, it's completely dark, but then, you know, the red hot rocks come into the lodge. They're heated in a fire, so they're very hot. And so it's pitch dark inside the lodge, but there's the heat and the glowing rocks. And it's just like, and you sweat in there, right? So it's like, it's a really like a, and when you come out of there, you're new, right? And you release all of that, you can release a lot of the, you know, pain or other things that you're carrying in those spaces. Um it's like a rebirth. Like, that's what that ceremony really is doing. And I feel like I know this isn't a sweat lodge, but it's just, it's really kind of returning to the mother, like, where, you know, when before we're born, it's like darkness, right? And like those glowing rocks are like the heart of our mother, right? And so, you know, and you have the drum beat going, which is like the heartbeat. And it's just like reconnecting to that sort of primal place where we come from. Is like, there's a lot of power in that. And there's a lot of power in remembering, like, you know, identifying as a female person, to know that, you know, to know the value of that responsibility of creating life. Like, that's so powerful. And to, you know, not, I feel like, you know, colonialism and patriarchy and all of that have kind of like really kind of devalued that process and what that means. But it's just like, it really, it's like this spark of creation, right? It's the beginning of all of us. And so I think that to have reverence for that, and to know that that is sacred, I think is a really important way for Indigenous women to also to heal, to understand the sacredness of our, you know, capacity to create in that way. Yeah. I'm just making that one up as I go, but I like it. It's good. We can go to the next. Awesome. Okay, we'll just end this one here. Again, that's sort of me halfway through this. You're kind of seeing it not in chronological order, which is so typical of me. But yeah, basically this is sort of like after I'd been in the, or before I'd been in the water, and just really gathering up that red thread and all of that at that same lake where I was holding the ribbon. So yeah, I don't know if I touched on everything that I sort of meant to say, but I'm really, really excited to have the show with you guys, and I'm really excited about the shawl that was created for this show. The shawl is actually like something that I thought would be a beautiful way to sort of bring in some of that ancestral knowledge, because I think of the shawl as something, you know, our matriarchs would wear, something, you know, women in our communities who have, you know, really held everyone together and hold those teachings and hold that knowledge and that power. That's what the shawl sort of represents to me. And I was also really excited to sort of invite someone from the community where you guys are at to contribute to the show as well, and like really bring that all together. And I'm very, very excited that I believe that Monica has allowed me to carry on with showing this shawl throughout the next few exhibitions the Red Dress Project will be at. Yeah, and yeah, it's been, I wish I could see the show. Oh my goodness. Sydney tells me good things, but I haven't seen it yet.
We'll
But
do
yeah,
a
if you guys
video
have any,
walkthrough, Jamie. We'll do
yeah,
a
that would be
video
sweet. I
walkthrough
thought we
of
might be
the
doing this like in the gallery, but we're not, but that's okay. But yeah, so thanks so much, you guys, for listening. And if you have any questions, we can definitely have a chat.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand or put something in the chat box as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, The shawl, who is it made by?
The shawl was made by Monica Antone Watson. So she's a Mohawk regalia seamstress that's based in Oneida.
I want to say thank you for bringing in your recognition of the indigenous women and spiritual violence and everything, because without that, I personally would have not known a lot more than what I have already discovered through the internet and social media.
Mhm.
How did how did it feel to start this whole spark?
Sorry, can you say that last? You're kind of cutting out a little bit. Just the last thing you said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
How does it feel that you started this whole spark?
Yeah. It, I don't know. It feels surreal because it's just like impossible to even, it's impossible to fathom like how far and wide this work has gone. So it's just like, I don't know, I'm just like regular me, like living in my house in my bedroom doing artist talk. Like, I don't know, like just, taking care of my little boy and like doing dishes and I don't know, being a regular person. But then yet all this stuff is also happening. So it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I feel really lucky, that's for sure. Like, because, I've met so many amazing, amazing people all across Canada doing this work. Like, and, all the circles I run in are circles of women who are doing work like I'm doing. And so it's actually extremely empowering to be able to have that kind of support and guidance and, just like, man, like it's really amazing. And I'm also like reconnecting to like cultural things that my family had lost through doing this work. Um so it's a pretty cool ride that I'm on. Yeah.
It is cool because so I went to the exhibition and Jaeger and the museum that of your red dress project.
Mhm.
I knew what they meant because spirits can only see the color red. Am I correct?
Mm. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
When I saw those, I thought they were like there, there. They're just there to show that they were alive, and
Yeah.
they were people too. And it's just heart wrenching, and it's just
Mhm.
brought inspiration to it too.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, B, go ahead. Thanks.
Anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, I
No,
do.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I had some major moments when I went to the opening. When you had us take those strips of cloth, and what we did is we tied them on the stairway going up to the second floor. First, I started tying it, and I couldn't just tie it. I started making it tighter and tighter and tighter till almost it turned into a knot. And I thought, that's where I'm supposed to be right now. And then because of how we went over to the slip and made marks on the wall of handprints, when I put mine down there, all I can say was it was beyond just making a handprint, because finally I did, and I kind of scraped on the wall and kind of scraped through it. And after that happened, I still had the clay on my hands before I could wash them off. It seemed almost sacrilegious to wash my hands, I got to say that. But then I went over to the piece that I had wrapped. I went over there. I started putting the clay slip on that knotted piece of cloth there, because I couldn't anymore leave it to be just sanitized cloth. So that's one thing. And there were moments during your film, which I loved. It's really big on the wall. It covers this big wall. There were moments in there where I thought the only way I could understand it was by not looking at it. Not repulsed or anything, but just I had to see without seeing it.
Yeah.
And it kept on going. And one of the things that Stephanie did when she was our ceramics teacher, made the slip, instead of having stones, I think you already know this, but there were pieces of clay that she took out of there, out of her studio. And that same clay was the same clay that made this clay that we could stick our hands on. There was a tie through it. It was really quite amazing. And it grounded that below that one dress that was there. And so I don't mean this to be about me, okay? I really don't. I'm talking too much, but I want to say that I'm going to go back there. I want to take more pictures of it and just send it to a lot of people. One of my friends, Joanna Big Feather out in Albuquerque, we've been talking about this show coming up. And another thing is a friend whose husband endowed this big program, the Foundation for Indigenous Native events, and it's part of the sponsors for your show. And she doesn't live around here anymore, but that was really, I could see him being there. I'll be quiet. Be quiet. Thank you.
Oh, Miko, so much for sharing that. That's super beautiful. Like, I feel like you just intuitively knew, you just followed your intuition in that space, and that's so beautiful. Like, holy moly, like, you just got me all teared up over here, which happens lots doing this work. But yeah, that's so beautiful, because I think that your instincts were right on, like really right on, just knowing the sacredness of that space, and and what the commitment we're leaving by leaving that handprint is, just showing care. It's showing care. It's showing we support, these women and their families, and in the physical and the spiritual world, like, just showing that care. And so I really thank you for, just being able to tap into the sacredness of that space. That really means a lot.
I think Doug has a question.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you again for being with us tonight. And I just wanted to say that the students' response to the show has been really overwhelmingly positive, and they've been very moved by the show. So I just wanted, if you hadn't heard that yet. My question is about the new, more recent attention that's been paid to all of those boarding schools across North America that Indigenous children were forced to go to as an attempt to erase their culture. And I wondered if anyone in Canada or anyone in North America has taken your idea of commemorating those people and drawing attention to those absent people and adapted it for that issue, which is a different issue, but related to some in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interrelated, right? Like, I mean, it's the same program of assimilation and colonization that has created all of this violence, right? I mean, people here are, people have been wearing orange shirts. I don't know if you guys have heard about Orange Shirt Day in the States. Is that something that I guess obviously you don't
We
know?
don't have it here,
Yeah.
but I think it's talked about a bit in Canada.
Yeah, like a little bit. Yeah. So I mean, in some ways, I think that there's just like there's there's been a lot of public outcry like since that, those children were found. And it's sort of like, sorry, I have lots to say about this, but I just need to like gather my thoughts. I guess it's frustrating because, for one, during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, families came forward and told these stories over and over and over and over again, and no attention was paid to their testimony as being truth somehow. Because they knew this. The families knew this. Communities know this. They know that those grounds have, that children died in those schools en masse. And so that's one thing that's like a little frustrating about how the media and sort of like the public discourse is going around talking about these issues here in Canada right now. And so, no real public attention was paid to that until there was like, forensic or whatever, like scientific evidence. People saying this happened obviously doesn't matter. So until there was scientific evidence with whatever radar, whatever they have, and then it became a huge public outcry. And it was a huge public outcry for what feels like not long enough to me. For like it felt like a news story blip. Like it was like, oh my God. But then like, as the media and the public attention died down, more and more and more and more, every school is being investigated across the entire country. And the numbers are in the like 5,000s right now. So, I mean, I could go on. I guess this isn't really answering your question, but I'm just giving you like a little sense of like how things are happening here. And so they have created, so there have been many things done. So there's a little bit of public knowledge of what's going on, but I think the scope of it has been lost because the media didn't continue to cover it as it kept happening and kept being found over and over. There are obviously like community and grassroots groups that are always fighting to raise awareness about this. There's now September 30th is coming up this week, is a day for commemorating children of residential schools and residential school survivors. So there's that happening. And then like here in Winnipeg, there's a human rights museum, and they do a lot of programming around really bringing out the truth about all of these stories and bringing in Indigenous families and people who have been through this stuff to be able to speak out about it. And they have, that's kind of a platform for public knowledge there. And one of the stories that came forward was a woman who had gone to residential school, and when they got there, the kids they couldn't have anything of their own with them when they went into the school. It's basically like going to jail. Nothing that meant anything to you could come in with you. So this woman remembers wearing an orange shirt, and it was taken from her. And so I think she's told that story, and that's what kind of led to the orange shirts being a symbol of, showing solidarity with, people who have, lost family members in this way. And so it's similar to the red dresses. So people have been wearing like orange shirts that became a whole thing where like non-Indigenous organizations were selling orange shirts, and I could go on and on and on, but I won't. So orange shirts are a thing. And then but also people have been tying orange ties instead of red ties. So that's something I'm seeing actually a lot all across Canada right now as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, that was a long
No, not at
answer.
all.
Any other questions from anyone?
Because I don't know, but get the but, I don't know. Women who have survived the violence
Mhm.
that you're speaking about, what kind of obstacles are you aware of that they've run into?
Right, like to try to get out of those situations, is that what you're asking? Or how did
Well,
we get
we're
here?
getting out, but after surviving, let's say surviving the violence somehow,
Right. Yeah.
are there particular communities that you would say actually have done a pretty decent job in helping that healing come with the justice?
I mean, it's difficult because I think we live in a society where that kind of violence is really widespread. People who go through it aren't believed a lot of the time. The policing system doesn't really properly address when people are in violent situations. And I think that all of those systems who are supposed to be helpful are actually predicated upon, really racialized and gendered ways of looking at the world. So there's problems there too. So like, for example, when families, this is specific to someone being missing, not having gotten out of the situation, but families have told me that they called the police to report their daughter missing, and they've been told we don't do family reunions, and hang up the phone on them. So this is the sort of thing where, so why would a survivor want to go tell the police? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
but I do think that like where I do see hope is communities pulling together and women pulling together to help women. And that's something I see over and over again doing the work I do. That's what I kind of hope that I'm doing with the work I'm doing as well, is like, creating a safe space to be able to tell these stories, to get help if we need help, to support each other. And then, in some of the circles I run in are, our ceremony circles, and, really relearning that cultural knowledge. And I feel like that can be really powerful for, women in distress to be able to have that sense of community, of learning together with other women, and healing together through ceremony and things like that. And that's not always perfect either, but but I feel like those are the spaces that we need to keep, supporting and building on for people to be able to, hopefully heal, and be able to move forward after experiences like that. I think part of the trouble too is that, these systems of colonization have created such unsafe conditions where, people are dealing with a lot of trauma, and trauma leads to addiction leads to unsafe behavior, and like, so we're all caught in you know, because of that constant trauma, and that, you know, it's a hard loop to get out of, to be honest. And you know, I'm not saying that it can't be, but it's also, you know, even if you escape that unsafe situation, you know, maybe your own family's unsafe also. You know, the society outside of the community is unsafe. Like, where is the safe space? And so I think that's really, you know, where we need to address things is, you know, supporting people with addictions to help heal, so like trying to, you know, continue doing this kind of work together to heal everybody, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we've got time for like one more question if anyone has anything to add. I have a quick question for Jamie, even though Jamie and I chat quite often. So do you have anything that you're working on or that you're thinking about working on, like a new project or something that you're hoping to start up sometime soon? And is it something that might be sort of coming from the Red Dress Project and your land-based work, or are you thinking about new directions at all?
Yeah, I'm actually like, it's funny because I'm actually like at a, how do I put this? Like, I feel like I'm in suspended animation right now. Like, there's still projects that are moving. So like the film that's in the gallery is going to be an Imaginative. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you that yet, but it is. The film festival in Toronto, so that's cool. And so like that's traveling around. And yeah, I think like right now I'm just like in this space of like I don't know, I'm just in this space of like figuring where the next step will be. And it seems to be pulling in a certain direction. Like, I was just recently ran a land-based camp for contemporary dancers, actually. And so I think that, like, you know, I might pull some more movement work into the work that I'm doing, and also like bringing that land-based sort of practice and sharing that with other people and seeing where that takes me. But I think, yeah, I think that I'm really interested in how, you know, dance can be a place to kind of release trauma and like the capacity for healing of dance, like just for my own self, like, oh my God. and all of us. So I think I want to, you know, kind of start exploring that and see where that goes.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing
What
all of
happens?
the things that you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's 7:00, and unless anyone has any other questions, I guess we can sign off. But thank you, Jamie, for coming and for letting your work do its work in our gallery and bringing
Yeah.
that attention to this epidemic of violence. And yeah, like Doug said, it has had such a great reception from our students, which I think is really, it's like both heartwarming and horrible because it's such a horrible thing to have to encounter, but it's really necessary. And so we thank you for doing your work and coming and talking to us about it tonight. So
Absolutely. Be glad.
Absolutely.
Good to see you all.
thanks, everyone.
Good night, you
Yes.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right. Thank you.